Racist cop laughs at teen in court, then discovers she's a genius attorney. Before we dive into the story, please hit the subscribe button. Also, drop a comment and let us know which city you're watching from. We love hearing where our community is tuning in from. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. The courtroom held its breath in the way only institutional spaces can, heavy with the weight of decisions, thick with the smell of old wood and nervous sweat. Detective Marcus Sullivan thought this would be his easiest win yet. Another mouthy teenager from the wrong side of town trying to play lawyer without a clue. What he didn't expect was for 18-year-old Zara Chen to dismantle his entire career, brick by brick, in front of a packed courtroom. The ancient air conditioning wheezed overhead as Zara walked through the heavy oak doors. She wasn't trying to make a statement with her outfit, just a crisp white button-down, black slacks, and her grandmother's pearl earrings. The kind of ensemble you'd wear to a job interview or graduation ceremony. But she carried herself like someone who belonged there, shoulders straight, eyes focused ahead. At the defendant's table, she sat alone. No high-powered attorney in an expensive suit, no legal team with briefcases full of precedents. Just Zara, 18 years old, facing charges of obstruction of justice and interfering with police procedure. The irony wasn't lost on anyone paying attention. Detective Sullivan leaned back in his chair at the prosecutor's table, arms crossed, a smirk, playing at the corners of his mouth. He'd seen this before. Kids who watched too many legal dramas thinking they could outsmart the system. This would be over before lunch. The Honorable Judge Patricia Hernandez presiding, announced the bailiff as everyone rose. Judge Hernandez, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing, took her seat behind the bench. Miss Chen, she said, consulting her files, I see you've elected to represent yourself today. Yes, Your Honor, Zara replied, her voice steady and clear. I must advise you that this is a serious matter. You'll be held to the same standards. As any licensed attorney, do you understand the gravity of what you're undertaking? I do, Your Honor. I'm prepared to proceed. Sullivan let out a quiet chuckle that carried just far enough for the court reporter to glance his way. This kid had no idea what she was walking into. But Detective Sullivan didn't know about the 4 weeks Zara had spent preparing for this moment. 4 weeks of 18-hour days, of reading case law until her eyes burned, of practicing opening, statements in her bedroom mirror until every word felt like truth. 4 weeks of transforming from a high school senior into someone who could stand toe-to-toe with the system that had tried to crush her. It had started on a Tuesday in October, the kind of Phoenix afternoon where the heat shimmers off the pavement and makes everything feel like a mirage. Zara had been walking home from Desert Ridge High School, earbuds in, when she heard the commotion near the bus stop on Camelback Road. Marcus Rivera, a quiet junior she knew from AP History, was backed against a chain-link fence, hands raised. Defensively, a school security guard was shouting about a stolen cell phone, accusations flying without evidence. The situation was tense but manageable until Detective Sullivan arrived. Sullivan had a reputation in their neighborhood. Kids called him Sully the Bully behind his back, a cop who saw young people, especially young people of color, as problems to be solved rather than humans to be protected. He'd been assigned to their district after complaints about his heavy-handed tactics elsewhere, a lateral move that everyone understood was really a demotion. "What's the situation here?" Sullivan barked, not waiting for an answer before grabbing Marcus by the shoulder. "Officer, he didn't do anything," Zara said, pulling out her phone. "I was here when—" "Back up, little girl," Sullivan snapped, his voice dripping with condescension. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does concern me," Zara replied evenly, starting to record. "I'm a witness. Marcus was just waiting for the bus when this started." That's when Sullivan's demeanor shifted from dismissive to dangerous. "You want to be part of this? Fine. Turn off that camera and step back, or you'll be joining your friend here." "I have the right to record police activity in a public space," Zara said, her voice growing stronger. Fourth Amendment protections, Arizona Revised Statute 13-2402. Sullivan's face darkened. Without another word, he spun Zara around, cuffed her hands behind her back, and shoved her toward his patrol car. Obstruction of justice, interference with police procedure. Congratulations, counselor. You just talked your way into a felony charge. The arrest made the local news, but only as a footnote. Local teen arrested for interfering with police. Investigation. No mention of the video that captured everything. No questions about whether the arrest was justified. Just another story about a troublemaker who should have kept her mouth shut. But Zara wasn't most teenagers. The daughter of a legal secretary and a paralegal, she'd grown up around law books and courthouse conversations. Her parents, David and Maria Chen, had met while working for a civil rights attorney who specialized in police misconduct cases. They'd taught her that the law could be a shield or a sword, depending on who wielded it. "We'll find you a lawyer, Mia," her mother said that first night, after the booking and the fingerprints and the long ride home. "Maybe Mr. Santiago will take the case pro bono." "No," Zara said quietly. "I'm going to handle this myself." Her father looked up sharply. "Zara, this isn't a debate class. This is your future." "Exactly," she replied. "And I'm not going to let someone else decide what that future looks like." What followed was a master class in preparation that would have impressed law school professors. Zara began by requesting every piece of documentation related to her case. The police report, witness statements, Sullivan's body camera footage, and the dashboard camera video from his patrol car. She filed Freedom of Information Act requests for Sullivan's disciplinary record and found a pattern of complaints stretching back 5 years. She reached out to her parents' former boss, retired attorney Carmen Santiago, who agreed to serve as an unofficial advisor. Carmen introduced her to legal databases, taught her how to research case precedents, and most importantly, showed her how to think like a lawyer. "The law isn't about being right," Carmen explained during one of their evening sessions at her home office. "It's about proving your case. Emotion doesn't win trials, evidence does." Zara absorbed everything like a sponge. She studied Arizona criminal procedure, memorized rules of evidence, and watched hundreds of hours of courtroom footage to understand how trials actually worked. She practiced cross-examinations with her younger brother playing witness, refined her opening statement until it was letter perfect, and prepared for every possible objection the prosecutor might raise. But her secret weapon wasn't just preparation. It was the video. The one Detective Sullivan thought he'd erased when he confiscated her phone. What he didn't know was that Zara's phone automatically backed up to the cloud, and that video contained everything. Sullivan's aggressive approach, his failure to assess the situation, his escalation of a minor incident into an arrest. Most damning of all, it showed Marcus Rivera never committing any crime at all. As the trial date approached, word spread through Desert Ridge High and the surrounding community. Teachers who'd had Zara in class remembered her fierce intelligence and uncompromising sense of justice. Students who'd witnessed the arrest began reaching out, offering to testify. Even Marcus Rivera, initially too scared to get involved, agreed to take the stand. The morning of the trial, Zara woke before dawn and went through her routine one final time. She reviewed her notes, practiced her breathing exercises, and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection. "Truth has a way of winning when you give it a voice." Now, sitting in the courtroom as Judge Hernandez called the proceedings to order, Zara felt the weight of the moment. In the gallery behind her, she could see her parents, her brother, several teachers from school, and Marcus Rivera with his family. Near the back, she spotted a reporter from the Phoenix New-Times who'd caught wind of the story. "The state will present its opening statement," Judge Hernandez announced. District Attorney Jennifer Walsh rose from the prosecutor's table, a veteran lawyer with 15 years of experience and a reputation for getting convictions. She painted Zara as a disruptive teenager who'd interfered with a police investigation, escalated tensions, and showed blatant disrespect for law enforcement. Your Honor, this case is about maintaining order and respecting authority, Walsh concluded. The defendant chose to insert herself into a volatile situation, directly defying lawful orders from a police officer. Her actions endangered everyone present and prevented Detective Sullivan from doing his job effectively. When Walsh sat down, all eyes turned to Zara. She stood slowly, walked to the center of the courtroom, and looked directly at the jury. "Your Honor, members of the jury," she began, her voice clear and strong. "My name is Zara Chen, and I stand before you not as a lawyer, but as a citizen who believes that justice requires courage. Over the next few hours, you're going to see evidence that will challenge everything the prosecution just told you. You're going to see that sometimes doing the right thing means standing up to authority, and you're going to see that truth, when presented clearly and honestly, speaks for itself." She paused, making eye contact with each juror before continuing. "I don't ask you to take my word for anything. I ask you to watch the evidence, listen to the witnesses, and decide for yourselves whether seeking justice is obstruction or whether it's the highest form of civic duty." Judge Hernandez nodded approvingly as Zara returned to her seat. Round one had gone to the defense. The state called Detective Sullivan as their first witness. He took the stand with practiced confidence, his uniform pressed, his posture military straight. Under Walsh's questioning, he presented his version of events, a routine response to a theft report that was complicated by an uncooperative teenager with a camera and an attitude. "Detective Sullivan," Walsh asked, "can you describe the defendant's behavior during this incident?" "She was aggressive and confrontational from the moment I arrived," Sullivan replied smoothly. "She refused multiple direct orders to step back, continued recording despite being told to stop, and created a dangerous distraction while I was trying to assess a potentially volatile situation." "Did you feel threatened by her actions?" "I felt that she was deliberately attempting to interfere with my investigation and escalate tensions. In my 17 years of experience, I've learned to recognize when someone is trying to provoke a confrontation." Walsh nodded with satisfaction. "No. Further questions?" Judge Hernandez turned to Zara. "Your witness, Miss Chen." Zara stood, legal pad in hand, and approached the witness stand. This was the moment she'd been preparing for, the confrontation that would determine everything. "Detective Sullivan," she began, her voice respectful but firm, "you testified that I was aggressive and confrontational. Can you define what you mean by aggressive? You were shouting, moving toward me despite orders to stay back, and waving your phone around. I see. And by shouting, you mean speaking loudly enough to be heard over your own voice." Sullivan's jaw tightened slightly. "You were raising your voice, yes." "Detective, I'd like to play the video from my phone for the jury." Zara walked to the evidence table and picked up a tablet connected to the courtroom's audio-visual system. "This is People's Exhibit A, the recording I took during the incident." The courtroom fell silent as the video played. The audio was clear. Sullivan's harsh commands, Zara's calm responses, Marcus Rivera's frightened compliance. Most damning was the timestamp showing that the entire incident, from Sullivan's arrival to Zara's arrest, lasted less than 3 minutes. When the video ended, Zara looked back at Sullivan. "Detective, in that recording, did you hear me shout even once?" "Videos can be misleading. That's not what I asked. In that video, did you hear me raise my voice?" Sullivan shifted in his seat. "Not substantially. And regarding my movement toward you, the video shows me standing in the same location for the entire interaction, doesn't it?" I perceived a threatening advance. "But the video shows me stationary, correct? The angle doesn't show everything." Zara walked back to her table and picked up another document. "Detective Sullivan, I have here your police report from this incident. You wrote, and I quote, 'Subject approached aggressively while recording, ignored multiple commands to cease interference, and continued to escalate despite warnings. Is that accurate? Yes. So you're testifying that I approached you, correct? That's what I observed. But the video we just watched shows me in the same location for the entire encounter. Can you explain this discrepancy? The courtroom was dead silent. Sullivan's face was beginning to redden. Like I said, video doesn't capture everything. My perception— Your perception, Zara interrupted gently. Or your report. Which should the jury trust? What they can see with their own eyes, or what you wrote in your official statement? District Attorney Walsh objected to the form of the question, but the damage was done. Sullivan's credibility was beginning to crumble. Zara continued methodically, picking apart each element of Sullivan's testimony with surgical precision. She introduced his disciplinary record, showing a pattern of excessive force complaints. She highlighted inconsistencies between his testimony and the physical evidence. Most effectively, she got him to admit that he never actually witnessed Marcus Rivera commit any crime. "Detective Sullivan," she said in conclusion, "isn't it true that you arrested me not because I committed obstruction of justice, but because I was recording your interaction with Marcus Rivera? I arrested you because you interfered with police business." What police business? You've just admitted that no crime was committed, that I never physically interfered with your actions, and that I remained stationary throughout the encounter. What exactly was I obstructing? Sullivan's face was now visibly flushed. You were undermining my authority. The courtroom stirred at his admission. Judge Hernandez had to gavel for order. No further questions, Zara said quietly, but her words carried across the silent room like a bell. The state called 2 more witnesses, the school security guard who'd initiated the complaint, and another officer who'd arrived after Zara's arrest. Neither could provide testimony that contradicted the video evidence, and Zara's cross-examinations were brief but devastating. Then it was her turn to present her case. She called Marcus Rivera first. Marcus, nervous but determined, testified that he'd been waiting for the bus when the security guard approached him about a phone that had gone missing from the school earlier that week. "I never took any phone," he said clearly. "I was just trying to get home. Then Detective Sullivan showed up and everything got crazy." "Did I threaten anyone during this incident?" Zara asked. "No. You were trying to help. You saw what was happening, and you stood up for me." "Did I physically interfere with Detective Sullivan's actions?" "You never moved. You just recorded and asked questions." Next, Zara called Dr. Emily Rodriguez, a digital forensics expert from Arizona State University, who'd analyzed the video at Zara's request. Dr. Rodriguez confirmed that the video was unedited and provided a frame-by-frame analysis showing that Zara never moved from her original position. "In your professional opinion," Zara asked, "does this video show any behavior that could reasonably be characterized as aggressive or threatening?" "None whatsoever. The subject remains stationary, speaks in measured tones, and makes no threatening gestures. If anything, the video shows remarkable restraint under pressure." Finally, Zara called Carmen Santiago to the stand. Her parents' former boss testified about Zara's character and her knowledge of constitutional rights. "Miss Chen has been around legal proceedings her entire life," Santiago explained. "She understands the importance of documenting interactions with law enforcement, especially in communities that have experienced patterns of police misconduct." When the testimony concluded, Judge Hernandez called for closing arguments. District ties. Attorney Walsh did her best to salvage the state's case, arguing that respect for law enforcement required citizens to comply with all police orders, even unreasonable ones. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Walsh said, "if we allow citizens to second-guess every police action, to record every interaction, to question every command, we undermine the very foundation of law and order that keeps our communities safe." Then it was Zara's turn. She stood before the jury one final time, no longer the nervous teenager who'd walked into the courtroom that morning, but a young woman who'd found her voice and her power. "Members of the jury," she began, "the prosecution wants you to believe that questioning authority is obstruction of justice. They want you to believe that documenting police actions is interference. They want you to believe that standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves is a crime. But I submit to you that the opposite is true. In a democracy, citizens have not just the right, but the responsibility to hold their government accountable. The video you saw today doesn't lie. Detective Sullivan did. His report doesn't match the evidence. His testimony doesn't match the facts. I didn't obstruct justice that day. I documented injustice. I didn't interfere with police procedure. I protected someone from police misconduct. And I didn't commit a crime. I exercised my constitutional rights as an American citizen. You have the power to send a message today. You can tell Detective Sullivan and officers like him that badges don't grant the right to lie, that uniforms don't provide immunity from accountability, and that young people, especially young people of color, deserve the same protection under the law as everyone else. I trust you to look at the evidence, to see the truth, and to do what's right. Thank you." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, their verdict was swift and decisive, not guilty on all charges. But Judge Hernandez wasn't finished. "Before we adjourn," she said, "I want to address Detective Sullivan directly. The evidence presented in this courtroom suggests a troubling pattern of behavior that demands investigation. I'm referring this matter to Internal Affairs for immediate review, and I'm ordering all charges related to this incident to be dismissed with prejudice." She turned to Zara. "Miss Chen, in 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such thorough preparation from licensed attorneys, let alone from someone representing themselves. You've demonstrated not just legal acumen, but moral courage. I hope you'll consider a career in law. We need advocates like you." The courtroom erupted in applause as Zara finally allowed herself to smile. But her victory was about more than beating the charges. It was about proving that justice doesn't require a law degree, just the courage to stand up for what's right. In the weeks that followed, Detective Sullivan was placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. 3 additional complaints surfaced during the review process, and he eventually resigned from the force rather than face termination. The video of Zara's closing argument went viral on social media, inspiring thousands of young people to learn about their constitutional rights. Law schools from across the country reached out with scholarship offers. Civil rights organizations invited her to speak at conferences. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from Marcus Rivera's mother, who stopped by Zara's house the day after the trial. "You saved my son," she said simply, tears in her eyes. "Not just from those charges, but from believing that the system would never work for someone like him. You showed him that justice is possible." 6 months later, Zara Chen began her freshman year at Stanford University, majoring in political science with plans to attend law school. She kept the video of her arrest on her laptop, not as a reminder of injustice, but as proof that one person, with preparation, courage, and an unwavering commitment to truth, can change everything. The case of State of Arizona versus Zara Chen is now taught in constitutional law classes as an example of effective pro-se representation. But for Zara, it will always be remembered as the day she learned that real power comes not from a badge or a title, but from the willingness to speak truth to power, no matter the cost. Detective Sullivan learned that day that underestimating someone based on their age, their race, or their background is always a mistake. Zara Chen taught him, and anyone else paying attention, that justice doesn't always come from the top down. Sometimes it rises from the ground up, carried by the voice of someone who refuses to be silent in the face of injustice. And sometimes that voice belongs to an 18-year-old girl with a camera phone and an unshakable belief that right is right, no matter who says otherwise.